Hello, welcome back to another edition of Sally's Astrology Book Club. The book I'm reading this month is called Lunar Nodes, Keys to Emotions and Life Experiences. I heard about this book through a lecture I attended online with Mark Jones, who said that this book by Diane Ronngren was a very good beginner book on kind of laying the groundwork for understanding the lunar nodes, which is something that's always a little bit complicated to understand just because there are so many views of how the lunar nodes function in our charts. Diane Ronngren, I understand, was a very gifted astrologer who has since passed away, but the astrologer April Elliott Kent, a wonderful astrologer, said that Diane was her very first astrology teacher, and she owes a lot to her. And so I think that we can all be grateful today for having April Elliott Kent's wonderful work in the world because of Diane Ronngren. So this book is a fairly short book. It's accessible on Amazon if you're interested in purchasing it. And it just lays out in very clear detail how Diane Ronngren interprets the North Node and the South Node and the natal chart. And also she talks about the transiting nodes through our charts. For example, right now we've got the North Node going through Aries and the South Node going through Libra. And so those are touching the houses in your chart ruled by Aries and Libra right now. She also talks about the North Node or the South Node as being the place of our comfort zone. It explains the conditioning that we have, really going back deeply into childhood and with our family, even our DNA. And so it's an area of life that we feel very comfortable with. It can also explain some difficulties that we had too early in life that we need to overcome. The North Node then to her is where we challenge ourselves to grow as human beings. And she says that we really don't look at them as either or, that you really need to put the two together. So I'll share some examples with you to give you an idea of how she would describe this. For example, if you were born with Aries as your North Node and Libra as your South Node, you're very comfortable working in partnerships. You need the approval of others. You like to work cooperatively. You like to follow the pleasant path. She said there could even be something concerning art, artistic expression, very Venusian things in your early life that would have conditioned you, so that you tend to seek situations that are very complacent, very easygoing, not liking a lot of conflict. But our challenge for growth is to move to the Aries North Node. And this is independence, going it alone, innovating, and negotiating through conflict and confrontation. So we need to develop that sort of inner warrior when we've got that North Node in Aries. And then once we're able to do that, we're able to bring that strength back into our partnerships. And so that's how we see the two nodes working together. And a person, for each example, I look for a celebrity just so we can have I'll share kind of a sense of who this person is. Michael B. Jordan, and an actor he's been an actor from the time he was a very young man, even a teenager, I think. He went to an arts school where his mother was a teacher. And so he learned acting at a very young age. So there's that Libra conditioning. He was someone who, got along well with others and started developing as an actor. But it's interesting, when he started taking roles, he went to very Aryan type roles. He played, one of his earliest roles was playing a very aggressive, hyper type of football player in the TV show Friday Night Lights. And so you just see him constantly kind of pushing up against authority in that show, very Aryan. He also played Apollo Creed's son in the movie series Creed. And so developing himself as a prize fighter, trying to overcome his father's background and establishing his own identity, that innovation. And we also saw in Black Panther, of course, he played a role where you can see in that picture, very warrior-like. So I think it's kind of interesting that he's moving towards his North Node through the roles that he's choosing to play. Also, he has formed his own production company, going back to the innovation aspect of being that Aries North Node. And his goal is to play the first Black Superman, a movie that he is going to be producing over the next few years. And so you can see how developing this very martial side of himself, he's able to bring it back to the Libra South Node in his artistic expression and creating works that other people really enjoy. When you're born then with the Scorpio South Node and Taurus North Node, you've got the contradiction here between early in life, you may have found that you were not really given what you needed or expected. You pretty much had to settle with what was offered to you. There was maybe a pressure to conform, that everybody else is doing this, you should do it too. Everybody else is wearing these clothes, you should wear them too. That sort of social pressure just to fit in and be like everyone. You would have felt maybe a particular powerlessness in childhood, that other people and their opinions were pretty much managing your life. So the challenge for growth with the Taurus North Node is to realize that you have the right to demand what you want, that you can express your self through your clothes, through your identity, through your activities, through your creations, that you do not need to conform to what's expected of you. You do not have a right to the expectation just to accept what is offered. You have the right to create a life that you value based on the things that you enjoy, and that you have the right to be loved and cherished and valued for who you are, not for who others want you to be. I chose Lady Gaga, someone with this dynamic in her chart. She was, a very kind of mild-mannered Catholic schoolgirl in an Italian family, where the expectation was put on her that she would conform to a certain identity, live a certain life. And as she grew older, though, she found that this was not the path that she wanted to follow. She realized that she had her own sense of style. She really created, reinvented herself from Stephanie to Lady Gaga, and became someone who was considered by others to be outlandish, radical, on the edge, but yet, gosh, she had an amazing talent too. And so she learned that by being herself, she was able to build legions of fans through that, finding what she was really passionate about and putting it out into the world. And so that she came to be loved and cherished for who she was. And she's also created a foundation to help others who feel that they're younger people who feel like they're outcasts or freaks, or they aren't like everyone else. And this is really supporting younger people to come into their own identities and creating their own sense of empowerment. So again, that discovering the value that she put on herself and bringing it to Scorpio, helping to empower others. When you have that Gemini North Node and Sagittarius South Node, your conditioning is really within a family or culture where beliefs are strong. As Diane Ronngren says, you almost inhale a certain faith, a certain culture with your family because it was just so very strong. And so the challenge for growth is to exercise that curiosity of the Gemini North Node, that to take an interest in other points of view, other people, how they're living their lives. And this expansiveness, then you're able to bring back to that base that you have in your Sagittarian South Node. It expands, it builds your faith. And so Dolly Parton was born with this nodal axis. And we do know from her childhood, talking about inhaling a faith and a culture, she grew up in the mountains of Tennessee, pretty much isolated from the rest of the world, to a very Christian religious family. And so she developed a faith then that she carries with her to this day. But it was a very isolated culture. And so she had that curiosity about the world. As soon as she was 18, she left home to make her way in the world and to establish fame as a singer and performer. And so by using that curiosity about the world around her, she was able to take an interest in all people, found many people who could help her. She also was open to multiple points of view. Today, she's considered rather unique in that she doesn't really have any people who dislike her. She has that sort of warm-hearted openness that other people love and find enduring wherever they fall on the political spectrum. So she appeals to all ages, different cultures, different political philosophies. And so she's been able to use that openness, that curiosity, that building bridges, and brings it back to her own early faith in a very expansive, open, heartfelt religious faith. And so also one thing about Dolly Parton is that her father, living in the mountains, supporting, I think it was 12 children, never learned to read, which she always felt was a tragedy. And so she started the Imagination Library, which is with the mission of providing books to every child from the age of birth through the age of 5, so that they would grow up having books, in their hands to look at and to learn from. Because she so believed that very Gemini North Node idea that everyone is enriched by knowledge, by learning, by finding out things that they wouldn't find out just by living in their ordinary everyday world. And so Dolly Parton then is a wonderful example of this dichotomy between the curiosity of the North Node helping to build the expansiveness and the worldview of the Sagittarian South Node. If you're born with a Capricorn South Node and a North Node in Cancer, your comfort zone is really being the responsible one, achieving recognition and respect in the outer world. It could be that there was ambition kind of baked into your life from the time that you were little. It could be your parents are very hardworking, or they put very high expectations on you that you are going to raise up the status of the family. You found that the way to get recognition and to feel like I'm comfortable in the world is by being, a standout in school or in sports or whatever activities that you're involved in. The challenge for growth then is moving towards that Cancer North Node, realizing that validation that you're seeking in public success can be found within the home and the private life. Building a home and a family with those who you love and who love you gives you that enduring foundation that is going to stay with you through life and that you can use as you go out into the world, so that you aren't being loved for who you are, your status or your accomplishment. You're being loved in this home and family just the way you are. And Kate Middleton, who's now the Princess of Wales, is a wonderful example of this dichotomy. She was born into an upper class, sort of upper working class family, though. Her parents had their own business and worked very hard, set high expectations for their children, sent them off to very Tony private schools. And that's, in fact, where she met, the future Prince of Wales, William. And so she was always a high achiever. She got good grades and she was good at sports. When she started working after school, she was always very accomplished. So she was someone who was really in that zone of external recognition. And of course, marrying the Prince of Wales, Prince William, is definitely the pinnacle of that, reaching for recognition in the external world. But we find in Kate with that Cancer North Node that her real strength is going to be in building a life and home with her husband and children. In fact, when you think about her role as the Princess of Wales, is to build a home with William for their family to carry on to the next generation. And she's the mother of, I would imagine, another king of England, George. And so while her role has a lot of external recognition, the actual job itself is a very Cancer-centered one, where she's helping support William in his work, helping raise her children to take on their duties as members of the royal family. And you can see in pictures of Kate when she's with her family that she's just glowing, that she's found that kind of love and recognition within that small family unit. And so even though being the Princess of Wales and having a lot of recognition, it comes with, a lot of criticism and a lot of backbiting. She's found that kind of peace and happiness and joy, not in really her status, but in her husband and children. Oh, right. So if you were born with a Leo North Node, your South Node would be in Aquarius. And so your comfort zone is functioning more as one among many, being a team player, believing in the equality of all people. You may have grown up where you were not told that you were really special, that there were other children in the family, you all had the same amount of attention, or you were in group situations, or your parents were very engaged in the outer world, and so that their mission in the world was more important than the children at home. And so all of those things can give you the sense that, okay, I need to really roll up my sleeves and be a team player in this life. That's where I'm comfortable kind of making my contribution within the group. But if you're a Leo North Node, your job, according to Diane Ronngren, is to realize that you are a star, that you have special gifts to bring to the community, and that although you may not have been patted on the back and told that you were wonderful for everything you did as a child, those gifts gradually unfold as you grow older. And so you find yourself kind of almost against your wishes, stepping up within groups and standing out and taking leadership roles. And I love the example of Barack Obama, who was born with these lunar nodes, because he did grow up with a mother. Number one, he grew up with a father who felt he didn't want to be a father and left. And so his mother, though, was someone who really wanted to save the world. She was an activist. She had many projects going on all the time. Sometimes she was in Hawaii, sometimes she was in Indonesia. So Barack himself was sometimes, in a private school in Hawaii. Other times he was in Indonesia with Muslim children. And so he, as he was growing up, learned to fit into a lot of different situations. And even when he went on to college and was a standout as a student and law student, he still, once he finished school, gravitated back to the position of being a member of the team. He was a community organizer, really helping everyone achieve their recognition, helping everyone feel included in their community. And then he went on to serve, in a rather humble position for a politician in the state legislature, where again, he was one among many, helping to write laws for the people of the state of Illinois. But he had this gift, of oratory. He was really able to stand in front of a crowd and just make his voice sing and stir crowds. And this gift just kept slipping out as he did these different activities. So by 2004, he was well known enough to be invited to speak at the Democratic National Convention. And in this convention, he gave a speech that just electrified not only the whole convention floor, but everyone listening at home. His speech was about inclusiveness and equality and all of the ideals that he had been fighting for all of his life, but yet he himself was such a shining star that everyone wanted to follow him. And so that was really the beginning of his ascendant into first a senator, a United States senator, and then a candidate for president of the United States, and then president. And so almost against his will, he became that shining star with the Leo North Node that he was born to be. And so today, as a former president, he's able to see how you bring that gift back to the South Node through his library, through his foundation, able to create opportunities for people within the community to excel and find acceptance. Now, when you're born with the Pisces South Node and the Virgo North Node, Diane Ronngren says you tend to learn to live with chaos and dysfunction. You're swimming in a sea of imagination and dreams. Your early life could have been very confusing, that you maybe had a lot of time on your own where your imagination kind of took over your life. But you also, in moving towards that Virgo North Node, learned very concrete steps to take to realize your dreams. You learned practical skills. You learned how to be of service to others. And so I looked at the chart of Mindy Kaling, who was born with this lunar nodal axis in her chart. And I know from her memoir that she did grow up in a home where her parents were immigrants, first-generation Americans, who, like a lot of immigrants, were highly skilled professional people. But when they came here, they had to start all over again and retrain, recertify. Her mother was a doctor, for example, so had to go through long hours of internships and residencies just to be able to practice medicine again. And so Mindy herself grew up with parents who were just working very hard just to survive in this new country. And so she had to learn how to negotiate through this very stressful home life. Even though it was a very loving home, there was just always that pressure of her parents to find a way to survive and thrive in this new world. And so she was left to herself. She watched a lot of television, fell in love with comedy, began to dream of being part of that show business world. And so as she went through college and then went to New York to try to make it in show business, she learned very Virgo style that people weren't going to hand her opportunities, that she needed to make them. And so she developed her writing skills, her directing skills. She worked with, I think, a friend. They developed a play that ended up catching the attention of the producer of The Office. And so she was then brought on to The Office to serve as a writer and an actor. So you can see that over the years, she's developed a lot of practical skills. She can write, she can direct, she can produce, she can act. And so she's been on a path since then to not only create her own projects, but in doing so, create opportunities for others to act and direct and write and produce. And so you can see how this very practical Virgo North Node, the skills she learned, she's able to bring back to that Pisces South Node and create a very, just a life that's built on, really the life she dreamed of when she was a child watching TV back in her parents' home. And so when we've got Libra, now you can see we're switching now, the Libra North Node and the Aries South Node. So that's kind of the opposite of what we saw with Michael B. Jordan. So your comfort zone really is being independent, going it alone, innovating, negotiating through conflict and confrontation. You're good, you're good at fighting. It could be you just had to learn a lot of independence and toughness growing up. And so when you look at your challenge to growth with a Libra North node, you need to work on functioning well in partnerships, that you don't need to go it alone, that others can help you. Working cooperatively with others, following the pleasant path, the peaceful path, realizing you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. All these things are lessons that you're here to learn with that Libra North node. And so John Lennon is an example of someone who was this kind of young, tough kid with his Aries South node. Lots of conflict in his early home life. His parents split up, put him in the middle. He ended up living with relatives. His mother was horribly killed when she was hit by a car when he was a teenager. So just a lot of really hard things that could have destroyed some children, but it just made him tough and angry. He had a bad reputation in Liverpool. In fact, when he started singing with Paul McCartney's father didn't want that, tough kid hanging around his son. And so he just developed that edge. However, he found an outlet. He would have, maybe ended up, in prison or worse, maybe killed in a fight. But music, in a way, saved him. So that's moving towards the Libra North node, artistic expression. But also, he found a band, and especially in Paul McCartney. They were both teenagers. I think they were 16 and 17 when they started playing music together. And so this gave him a new way to be, that he didn't have to be tough and angry and fight the world all the time. He could create, he could work well with others. He could just have that simple joy of creating and just the fun of it and hanging out with his mates. And then once he and Paul started writing songs together, they became, today still one of the most famous songwriting duos of all time. They just have this wonderful way of complementing each other. Even when they sang together, their voices just blended together in this really wonderful, lovely, pleasant way. But he also had another partnership, which was more controversial than the one with Paul McCartney. In the late 60s, the Beatles were a bit shell-shocked, from being through Beatlemania and going all over the world and just the insanity of the level of their fame. And, they were still doing the same pop tunes, and they were looking for a more significant spiritual step to take in life to make their music mean something. They were all approaching their Saturn returns. And so he didn't want to sing I love you, yeah, 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 as he gets into his late 20s and 30s. And so he met artist Yoko Ono during this time. And the two fell in love and began their life together. And while Yoko is sometimes credited with breaking up the Beatles, I think people kind of look at the story now and realize it was a lot more complicated than that. But she brought to John a sense of mission. He thought of himself after that as an artist. His music is art. And she also brought this level of social activism into his life, that they could protest war and protest for peace. So you can see how using these Libra skills, this partnership, brings him back to this Aries North node of where he's an activist towards the end of his life. Using his music and his words and his actions to demand a more peaceful world, or to imagine a more peaceful world. And so as you go into the Taurus South node with a Scorpio North node, it's kind of interesting. Your comfort level is to be comfortable. Chances are, Diane Ronngren says that you were given an abundance as a child, but not always what you wanted. She cites this as oftentimes found in children whose parents didn't have what they wanted in life, And so they want their children to have what they didn't have. And so the challenge to growth is to claim your own power and building a life that's not the life that your parents wanted for you, but that you want for yourself, based on your passions, not settling, not taking something just because it's offered. And so Prince was born with the South Node in Taurus and the North Node in Scorpio. And in his biography, I noticed that his father, when Prince was born, named him Prince. His father was a jazz musician, and Prince was one of his father's stage names. And he said, I want my son to have everything I didn't have. And so kind of set him up to have this life that his father had. Obviously inherited musical gifts, not just from his father, but from his mother. But Prince, once he became a teenager, didn't want to be a copy of his father or an image that his father wanted him to be. He wanted to create from his own passions, his own aesthetic, create his own type of music, which, was not really jazz so much as a blend of a lot of different styles. And so claiming your power is a big part of going to that Scorpio North Node, not taking what is offered. And Prince, you can see in this picture here, is very controversial. He ended up having a contract, a very lucrative contract with his record company, but he found that they wanted to control his music, when it could be released and what songs could be released. And of course, at that Scorpio North Node, his mission in life is really to claim his own power, to have his own music. And so he even said he was like a slave to the music company, which very controversial statement at the time. But he did protest for him for a while they still were issuing his music. He refused to use the name Prince and used this symbol instead. So he fought very hard and eventually prevailed to be able to own his own creations. And so you can see that in doing that, he was able to come back to that creative Taurus South Node and create an abundance in his own life from that. When we've got Sagittarius as the North Node and Gemini as the South Node, this is kind of the reverse of Dolly Parton's North and South nodes. Your Gemini South Node is you're very curious, you're very interested in the world around you, and you learn how to do many different things. You just have that dexterity and ability to pick up something and learn to do it. Your life can be very busy with that Gemini South Node, and you're comfortable with that. So the challenge for growth with a Sagittarian North Node is to focus on understanding life's bigger questions. Discover a path to deeper understanding and motivation for one's actions. So you need to stop buzzing around and actually sit down and study a philosophy, or embrace a political movement, or live by a certain faith, or just go on a quest to learn to answer the bigger questions. Read a lot of different people and come to answer, why are we here? Who are we? Where are we going? Those kinds of Sagittarian questions. And so when we see that we've got Sagittarius as our North Node, I look at Jane Fonda. She grew up, her curiosity was encouraged. She was from a well-to-do family. She had, good schooling, and she also developed an ability to do different things because she was Hollywood royalty. She was able to very easily really slip into a role as an actor and eventually a movie star. She eventually became a fitness guru. She became a businesswoman, became very wealthy, not just by her acting, but through her fitness business. So she was someone who just, like everything she turned her hand to, she did well, but she was not a happy person. She just was looking for that greater purpose to her life. And so as a young person, she found it in protesting the war in Vietnam. She wanted to use this public platform that she had almost had handed to her as a young person to fight for what she believed in, which was that it was wrong to be sending young American men off to Vietnam to die for a cause that no one even really understood, let alone believed in. And so she became very controversial even as a young person. But she persevered. She continued to do her Gemini thing, with her acting and her fitness work and her businesses. But she continued with her activism and stayed on that path. She was one of the first actresses to demand diversity in the people who worked around her. She fought for she's very big on labor rights and the rights of the people working on the movie sets where she was to have a fair wage and benefits. And so even today, she's continuing to serve as an activist, even while she's starring in, her own show on Netflix. She's going off on weekends to protest climate warming or income inequality, any sort of labor dispute. She's right there. In fact, she's even gone to jail off and on over these past few years in serving as an activist. So while she's been very busy, throughout her life doing a lot of different things, this has stayed consistent for her, that she is someone who believes in a certain way life should be for people, a certain fairness and justice, and she's going to continue to use her public platform to speak up for those issues. And so then we've got Capricorn North Node and Cancer South Node. And so the Cancer South Node is someone who's comfortable kind of within themselves. You think of a crab within a shell. They learn very early how to take care of themselves emotionally. It could be that in the family, the nurturing was not real strong. And so they learned, just how to be themselves okay, not needing other people to nurture them or take care of them. They have that emotional self-sufficiency, but at the same time, a great sympathy for others. In fact, this might be why a child who doesn't have the best home might, while not being very well nurtured by parents, might develop that sympathy for others because they can see why their parents aren't able to give them the care that they need. So the challenge for growth is to bring one's empathetic skill to the world at large and building a respected role within the community. And so accepting that responsibility is a way that you can feel good about yourself. It's kind of like in caring for others, you care for yourself dynamic. And so Capricorn is always asking you to establish something, not just within the home, but within the community that you live in, even if it's just your workplace or your neighborhood. The challenge is to be someone who is reliable, responsible within that group. And so Oprah Winfrey, born with this dynamic in her chart, she basically grew up in a nightmare. Her mother was a teenage mother, couldn't care for her. She was kind of shifted from different living situations. There was abuse, neglect, certainly, in her childhood. And she just sort of learned how to be self-sufficient and look out for herself because no one else really was. And something kept the spark alive. And by the time she was a teenager, notice Capricorn North Node, her father, who she'd never spent much time with, took her to live with him. And she said he was strict, but he was fair, and he set high expectations for her. So he said, you're going to go to school and you're going to be an honor student. You're going to shine. You're going to work hard and you're going to achieve something that you're proud of. And that's exactly what happened with her. She became a wonderful student. She started entering beauty contests and she went to college. She discovered her gift for speaking, to broadcasting, communicating. and then, of course, was on her way to becoming a broadcast star. But we also see that in that path towards going, beyond where she'd even imagined she could go in her life, she was building a respected role within the community. And she did that a lot by kind of learning on the job. As she was talking to people on her talk show, she learned and grew and read and brought what she learned to others. So that even today, even though she doesn't have a TV show now, I think she still works with a podcast and different publications where she's continuing to bring the wisest and most intelligent minds to the public, helping us all to learn and grow and evolve. So again, in that learning to care for others, she cared for herself, that dynamic between the North and South node. Okay, so Aquarius North Node and Leo South Node. This is the Aquarius North Node, or I'm sorry, the Leo South Node. You know pretty early in life that there's something not, you might say, special about you, different about you, unique. There's some sort of creativity that's bubbling up within you that's really makes you different from everyone else around you, whether it's your siblings or your schoolmates. You just sense that there's something that you love to do, that you're excited about, that not everyone else shares. And so you learn to kind of develop these own interests, kind of like hiding your light under a bushel from the time that you're very young. But yet, of course, that sort of creativity and that authenticity does have a way of bubbling out. And so the challenge for growth with an Aquarius North Node is to bring those unique gifts to the community and learning to be different and even considered eccentric. And so part of it is saying, okay, I am, truly interested in paleontology. It's all I think about. And you go to school and you start talking about it and all the kids think you're weird. But it's important that you continue to do this because eventually you're going to find your tribe of people who share your passions and strong beliefs. And Diane Ronngren said, this is important that you find the groups that resonate with who you are authentically and with your passions, and to be very honest with yourself. Are you with this group because you all are on the same page, that you're all sharing the same mission, or are you just going along to get along? Always fighting against conformity is important when you've got that North Node in Aquarius. And so, of course, Taylor Swift is a wonderful example of this Leo South Node, born probably from the time she was a little tiny girl, able to sing. By the time she was 9, she was actually performing. And by the time she was a young teenager, she was writing her own songs and playing the guitar. So this is definitely a creative gift that bubbled up early that I'm sure set her aside from all the other little 9-year-old girls in her neighborhood or her class at school. And so when she went to pursue a career when she was still a very young teenager, she was told, well, you like country music. The people who really resonated with her were people like Patsy Cline, who sang these wonderful songs and told these wonderful stories. And she said, but the stories I'm telling through my music are stories that are going to resonate with people. And they said, well, young people aren't going to get country music. But she said, but they're going to like these songs. And so staying true to her own nature, not performing songs that others wrote for her or told her, or writing songs in a style that others told her would appeal to a mass audience. For her, it was just following her own creative gifts. And of course, when you think of the tribe that she was able to find with her songs, I mean, there are fewer large, I think one of the largest tribes in the world is the tribe of Swifties, of people who love her music and her songs and feel that she, in a way, is telling their story too. And so also about finding groups that share your passions and strong beliefs. She, as a very young singer, was told, do not take any sort of controversial stand. You don't want to alienate your audience, just be vanilla. And she had a political awakening in 2018 when she realized that she did have certain beliefs that were important to her. She had a platform. And so she would step in and endorse a political candidate or a social issue. She was very active in encouraging young people to vote in 2020. So she was able to then kind of step out of that expectation that she conformed to this very bland, very generally popular singer who really had no opinions about anything to someone with a strong personal identity and set of beliefs. And then finally, we've got Virgo South Node and the Pisces North Node. And so when you've got a Virgo South Node, you learn early in life to be squared away, to take care of business, to manage to do your job, to be service to those around you. It could be, again, family situation was difficult, maybe a lot of drama going on. So you had to be the practical one who just did their homework without being told, got themselves ready for school on time. You just sort of learn those skills as a very young person. And then the challenge to growth, though, is to follow the path to spiritual growth, which your soul craves. So while so much of your time is really tied up with mundane matters, just keeping yourself going and organized and helping others around you to do the same thing, there's something in you that just longs for another world, to go beyond the mundane world into a more beautiful, more peaceful world where you don't have to worry about the people around you all the time. And so I looked at the chart of Matthew Perry. I don't want to get too much into the chart. It's awfully soon to be talking about him after his sad passing. But he did produce a memoir in 2022, which I think explained how this dynamic worked in his life. When he was a baby, his parents divorced. Each one went off and married someone else fairly soon and started families with their spouses. And so he was that kid who was kind of between the two families, would go back and forth, never quite the focus of either family. And so you can see he early in life learned to be the one who was squared away, who could go between the families, be just that, not being the squeaky wheel, because there was enough of that going on in his family. He just figured out how to look out for himself. He became a tennis star. He developed that ability, and also learned how to be funny. That was kind of his role in the family. When tensions got too much, he was the one who could diffuse the situation. And so you see that Pisces North Node and the path his life followed. You can see first, that humor and being funny helped him launch into a comedy career and then eventually acting career. So he was able, through artistic expression, find his way to this world that was away apart from the mundane world. You go onto a TV show or a movie and you're creating something amazing that is only really a figment of our imaginations. But unfortunately, in I think 1997, he had a jet ski accident and was prescribed opiates as painkillers. And this set him on the long, sad, difficult, tragic path of addiction. Not knowing, initially when he took the painkillers that he had an addictive personality. And so this led him, in a way, on even a more Piscean journey, because he spent years and years trying to get sober, in and out of rehab. It's interesting, he said for 3 years when he was filming Friends, he has no memory of those years because he was high all of the time. But however, you can see how that Virgo South Node was operating and keeping him going and functioning, in the everyday world while he was dealing with these very, very difficult and painful problems with his addictions. And so in following his path to finding a way to overcome his addiction, you had to learn a lot of Piscean lessons about letting go, of turning your life over to a higher power, and also for building empathy. with others. Just as others in your treatment program give you empathy and care, you learn to extend that to other people. And so not everyone born with a Pisces North Node is going to follow this, the path of addiction, but that is part of the process in trying to reach a higher reality, a letting go of some of our physical control on this planet. And also he said, after his book was published, he said, people are going to remember me as Chandler being on Friends, but I would really love to be remembered as someone who helped others, because he had, by that time in his life, encountered thousands of people who were like him, struggling with addiction. And he did what he could to help people stop drinking, stop using drugs, giving them that care and support that others had given to him. So while his life did end tragically, you can see that he very much used that Piscean North Node past to create that sort of sense of a higher spiritual reality, that we're here not just to suffer, but to help each other. And then, of course, bringing that back to his South Node and being of practical service to others. So anyway, that is the 12 signs, North and South Nodes. I hope if you know your South or North Node that you are able to follow this and find something that resonates in your life. And just remember, Diane Ronngren tells us that you don't have to live in one node or the other. Find ways to combine them. Aries North Node, learn to be independent and innovative and assertive, but yet bring that energy back into your partnerships. For example, being a stronger partner then. And so finding ways that to work instead of an either or as kind of like a free-flowing energy that goes between the two poles in your chart. So I hope you enjoyed this Diane Ronngren's material as much as I did, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you. Bye.